Mr. Dahman, any additions or corrections to the agenda that you know?
There's no changes to the agenda. There were two additions additions to the staffing report when we get to that agenda item that were put in today based on some staffing changes.
I did see those. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the noted additions.
A second.
There's a motion on the floor made by Rick, seconded by Leslie, to approve the agenda as presented with noted additions. Any questions on that? All in favor, respond with aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item E, Item D, action on minutes, which are in your board packet.
I'll move to approve the minutes for the regular meeting held on June 28th, 2021 as presented.
I'll second that.
There's a motion on the floor made by Jen, seconded by Dave, to approve the minutes for the regular meeting held on June 28th, 2021 as presented. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, respond with aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item E, action on vouchers, which are also in your board packet.
Mr. President, I will move to approve general checking account vouchers totaling $949,162.92 as presented.
I'll second.
There's a motion on the floor made by Joe, seconded by Leslie, to approve general checking account vouchers totaling $949,162.92 as presented. And any questions or discussion? All in favor, respond with aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item F is public comment. Just to review a few items about public comment. Those of you who did sign up, the sheet was over by the sign up, which you're always welcome to pick up. Every person has 3 minutes to speak. I will have my timer on my phone, just as a courtesy to you. When you reach 2.5 minutes, I will just quietly say 30 seconds, which is just to remind you that you have 30 more seconds to wind up your thoughts. Please direct all the comments to the board as a whole. Please don't direct your comments to any specific board member. The board members will not respond to you. That's just the protocol. That's policy. And no person may address or question board members individually. So with that, we will start. I'm going to start. There are 2 letters that were submitted that people would like. Requested that information I have requested that information the beginning of June and have yet to receive my records request despite payment for the request. Maybe the data does not support quarantining students. Hopefully soon I will have that information to share with the community since there seems to be a lack of transparency. Also, are you all really okay with causing segregation between vaccinated and unvaccinated students? Are you aware of the damage this can and will do to students once they are identified as unvaccinated? Who knows, maybe this is the point. Coercion into being vaccinated. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts. The next letter is from Sonia Liston. Hello, I previewed the document outlining the COVID protocols for the upcoming school year. As a previous virtual parent, I am disappointed. It appears that as of right now, Milton is choosing to move forward as if a pandemic isn't currently a public health concern. I'm disappointed that you are not setting stricter guidelines for our youngest children that don't have the option to be vaccinated yet. They rely on us to keep them safe, but yet with masking optional and physical distancing scaled back, you are leaving my family with little sense of security. I want my child to be back in school, but I did not keep him home all of last year to just simply leave his health to fate and politics. I was hopeful that Milton would lead us forward with safe practices, well thought out protocols, and at least some option for those of us who want our children protected until vaccinated. But it appears I will be left with hard decisions to make as the school year approaches. All right, for those who have signed up, Dan DeFore, and policy says if you could, when you get to the microphone, if you could state your name before starting, that would be great. Thank you. Nope.
I'm going to give it a shot. Got it. Thank you. All right. Hello. I'm Dan DeFore. I'm a resident of Janesville and live in the Milton School District. I'm speaking tonight about the need to amend the Epidemics and Pandemics Policy number 8420.01. This is the policy which was created at the outset of the COVID pandemic well over a year ago and is now being modified and extended for an additional school year. The specific portion of the policy to be addressed is where it states, and I quote, "District administration is granted authority to take appropriate action as required in any instance where the district's plan is inadequate or does not cover the particular situation being addressed, and the urgency of the situation dictates the necessity for immediate decisive action." That's the key point. Based on the words used in this policy, the ones I just read, I don't believe the intent of the policy was to provide unchecked and never-ending power to the administration. While we agree there was a need for a mechanism to take immediate decisive action, as it states in the policy, in order to protect the students and staff, we however, strongly believe there must be checks and balances in place to this policy. Let's not forget, our country was formed as a constitutional representative republic where the people provide the consent of the governed to our elected representatives, such as to our legislators and our school boards, who we entrust to make fair and just law and policy. And we do not provide this to unelected federal, state, county, or school board administrative official. We believe this policy must be amended similar to how emergency order powers are granted and restrained at the state level. In this case, emergency powers are granted to the governor for only 60 days. Beyond that time frame, the governor must go to our elected representatives, the legislature, for additional approval to extend the emergency orders an additional 60 days. We request the school board amend this policy immediately, particularly when the civil rights of students and staff are being trampled by the promise of safety and security, which can neither be measured nor validated, as in the case of the never-ending COVID guidelines. The three specific amendments we believe must be included are, number one, this granted authority must be time-bound, somewhere between 30 and 60 days. Number two,
30 seconds.
Any additional ongoing granted authority must be voted upon and reapproved by the school board in order for it to continue past this time frame. Number three, the granted authority can only be issued if quantifiable and measurable threshold targets have been provided.
Thank you, Mr. DeFore. Next is Tracy Hanna.
Don't think I'm on mute. Am I on mute?
No.
No, but it's still showing his, so it's not responding that it's me here. So it's still looking at
As long as it,
normally.
as long as it's not red there, you're fine.
Okay, so normally it turns and looks at me. Sorry, that's what happened last meeting. I tried to watch from home and I saw the side of Rick's head the entire time because he was looking over here, so apologies. My name is Tracy Hanna and I have a son that's going into middle school this coming year. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the updated COVID protocols released on Friday. I feel like our administration has brought us to the 10-yard line but needs to push us into the end zone on these protocols. The area I truly have questions and concerns with is the contract tracing quarantine bullet point that reads simply, RCHD requires contract tracing and quarantine for close contacts, and then it continues. The protocol change document does not state the Milton position on this, it's just a statement, nothing more. According to the RCHD website, as of 5/14, there were no longer any mandates in effect. I don't understand the point of this bullet point. If the admin is to action this point as written, I fear the administration is possibly going down a path of highlighting vaccine statuses to others and the possibility of vaccine shaming. For example, if 4 kids are contract traced and 2 come back to school, then is the school now highlighting to all of the other students and staff the vaccine status of that child? That seems wrong. Why does the administration not highlight a positive antibody test for proof of natural immunity? Why is that not acceptable? Why do students with no symptoms need to be quarantined at all? What does the data from this exercise last year prove that we did? Why has this not been made public? This would prove or disprove the proof of quarantining. Look around the county, state, and country. We have moved on. The cases in this county are minimal at best, and the average death in the state is 0. It is time for this board, the admin, our teachers, and our students to move on and get back to living and learning. Our children deserve this, and our teachers no longer need the distraction of contract tracing. Just like in prior school years, wash your hands, cover your sneeze, and stay home if you're sick. Put some trust back in the parents of the school district. You may be surprised. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hanna. Next is Mike Varan.
Hello, I'm Mike Varan. Just going to wing it tonight. I will say that the fact that masking is optional for students and teachers is a plus, and I applaud that. What I'm wondering is why we even need this plan anymore. Because, I mean, it's really, are we waiting for, do we know something is coming? And that's why we're having this continue. I'm wondering why the board hasn't taken their power back. And then the other would be, why hasn't the superintendent given his power back? Because it's no longer an emergency. And then the one thing I see, as last time, we're being pushed to vaccinate our kids. And that is sick. And you guys are here to protect our kids. And what you're doing is, by making it a well, not vax mask, but it's, like she said, it's, the protocol would be, it's different for ones that are vaccinated versus ones that aren't. And it's a shaming issue. And what I see is a number of board members just allowing an unelected official to tell you what to do. And what I can say is obedience is not a virtue. That's all I'll leave you with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Varan. Next is John Dumer.
You got the name right, I like that. Hi, my name is John Dumer. I am a Milton resident. I was not born and raised in Milton. However, my wife and I made the decision to move here about 17 years ago. When we discussed where we would want to raise our family, there was really not even a discussion about it, as we both immediately said Milton. Our decision has been confirmed over and over as we now have our 5th child entering the school system here in Milton. We've been blessed with so many teachers, aides, staff, and administrators over the years. Many of them are here today, and I want to say thank you for all you've done and will hopefully do. The Dumer family truly appreciates you all. I would also like to thank each board member for your service. I know it's not been easy to navigate the past 15 months or so. As elected officials, I'm sure there is an expectation for doing hard things, but one could not predict what this COVID season would bring. Lastly, I would like to thank each and every parent that has invested their time and energy to give feedback on some of these important issues as of late. No matter what side you are on, you are doing what you feel is best for your kids and your family. I hope we can continue to have good discussions that are both respectable and have a focus of what's best for our kids. This brings me to why I have signed up to speak tonight. I was able to see a copy of the Milton Forward Plan for the 21-22 school year. To be honest, it was a busy weekend camping, and I could not spend the time I really wanted to on it. I'm not sure when the board received a copy of this, and this leads me to a couple of thoughts I have for each one of you to hopefully listen to here right now. Have each of you 7 board members spent a fair amount of time on this plan? Have you received enough feedback from the community? Have you truly asked the right questions? If you do vote on this tonight, can you say with 100% conviction that you are ready to vote? If that answer is no, I ask that you do whatever you need to do to push this vote off for the next meeting. It is far too important for our kids and our community to vote before you are ready. When I look at it, there are a couple things that stood out for me. First off is the mask choice. Thank you for that. Secondly is the contact tracing. Is this really necessary? I don't have any stats or hard evidence that it is not, but I could share several stories that I have heard from kids in the community that have been impacted by this. Kids that were afraid to hang out with other kids before big sporting matches or prom or even their own high school graduation. Again, no stats here, but what is this really doing to our kids on a social or mental level? Do we even know? I leave you with this quote I heard from someone. Are we causing more damage to kids than what we are actually protecting them against? Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Dumer. And last is Steve Schilt.
All right. Hi, I'm Steve Schilt, and I am very grateful that you guys voted to remove the mask and make mask choice. When I saw the Milton Forward Plan, I was ecstatic to see that we are moving back to normalcy. Most of this plan looks like we're back to normal, and I'm very appreciative of that. I have a son going into 4K this fall and a daughter going into second grade. And this last year was incredibly stressful as it was for all of us. My concern about this Milton Forward Plan is at the very top, it says that it is subject to change. Now, I understand the virus is subject to change. We have the Delta variants and we have other variants going on right now. And I understand that causes uncertainty. However, what we're already seeing is that the Delta variants and these other variants are not as lethal as what COVID-19 was. And so to keep this Pandora's box open indefinitely because people might be getting sick causes a lot of stress. And for my wife and I to make a decision on what to do with our children this coming cold and flu season, and to all of a sudden have it sprung on us that we are now going to require masks again. We are going to require virtual learning. We might have to shut down again. I find that highly uncertain. And just like the comments that were made about summer school in voting to remove the masks or making masks optional, there was this precedence that, hey, we communicated ahead of time that we were going to require masks. And so you were appealing to that parent group. Well, all of us are going into this next school year with the understanding that we're back to normal. So I am asking for this Milton Forward Plan to be stopped. I don't think we need to live in perpetual fear of the unknown of virus mutations in society. The other thing that I'll echo briefly with some of these other comments tonight is the wording in the safety protocols, the vaccinated versus unvaccinated. I find it borderline irresponsible that we are mandating that people who have been unvaccinated without proof, you're asking to see proof of a vaccine, to not be quarantined for 10 days.
30 seconds.
If you're in a close contact. And as the questions have been asked tonight, we've been asking for scientific proof that if you are a close contact person to someone who had COVID-19, you have to quarantine for 10 days. I haven't heard of any cases, there might be some, but I haven't heard of any cases of those who have been forced to quarantine for 10 days just from being a close contact, they contracted COVID-19. So I'd like that out of there. And I'd like you guys to vote on that tonight, because I don't think that's fair at all to punish children or students for being in close contact with someone if they're not even showing symptoms, but yet vaccinated person, as long as they're not showing symptoms, they can come right back to school. How's that fair?
Mr. Schilt, thank you for your comments. Your 3 minutes are up. Appreciate it. All right, we will move on to item number 2, the superintendent update, discussion and possible action on changes to the COVID-19 protocols for the 2021-22 school year. Mr. Dahman, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I want to highlight a couple things and then walk through the proposed changes for the coming year in our COVID protocol. We had our last update with Rock County Public Health Department this past Thursday, July 8th. They shared that positive cases are low across both the county and the school district. As the number of vaccinations have increased, the number of positive cases has continued to decline. As of July 1st, which was the last report that we've gotten from Rock County Public Health on the numbers, 3.54 positive cases per 10,000 residents across the county. That's not specific to our students or staff. That's total county residents. That is a similar positive case amount to most of the other school districts in the county. So the number of positive cases has continued to decline, which has been very good news. In Rock County, approximately 56% of the residents in the county are fully vaccinated. And that rate of increase, though, has slowed. As when the vaccines were first available, there were a larger rate of people being vaccinated. That has leveled off, and it currently is at 56%. Vaccine availability is available now for anyone that's 12 years old and older across the county. At our meeting last Thursday, they reinforced that they don't know when it will be available for those who are 11 years old and younger. They're hopeful that will be available starting in the fall for those who choose to have the vaccine who are 11 and under, but they don't have any firm date on that yet. And they're also keeping an eye on the Delta variant. It is more contagious than the original strain. The Delta variant is prevalent in a number of states across the United States and also a number of other countries. They mentioned that it's prevalent in Iowa, but not yet prevalent in Wisconsin. So it's good news on that regard. They also reinforced that the vaccines are working very well against both the original strain and the Delta strain. From March through late June, 95% of the COVID deaths across the United States have been people who are unvaccinated. So they shared that data showing that the vaccination has been helpful in limiting hospitalizations and deaths across the country. The document that's in board docs are the COVID-19 protocol changes that are proposed for the coming year. I'm going to walk through those, and I'm going to go through the whole document. Sometimes if something's been in board docs and board members have had a chance to look at it, we'll highlight some things, but I want to make sure that it's everything on here is clear, and I have a chance to answer any questions that anyone has on this. So I'll walk through the whole document and then go through any questions from board members or comments from board members. As stated on the top, again, these are recommendations for the start of the school year. Because we have a large number of school activities that take place in August, we're looking at an August 1st start date for these recommendations. We will continue to monitor the situation, including the spread of COVID variants, and if those situations change, the protocol may need to be adjusted. So we want to make sure we're very clear to people that while if this is approved to start on August 1st, it doesn't mean that it would necessarily stay in place for the entire school year, because there may be some changes in the situation, and we certainly would want to be able to adjust to those changes. In the cleaning section, wiping down all surfaces throughout the day will no longer be required. We would still have sanitizer and disinfectant widely available in all classrooms and common areas, and tables, desks, etc. can be wiped down prior to use by those who are using them. But in the current plan, we've required when people are finished at a workstation, they would wipe that off themselves, whether someone is immediately coming to that space or not. So we would continue the nightly cleaning of frequently touched surfaces and continue the current process of cleaning lunchrooms. Under safety protocol, we would return to typical size classrooms. If you recall, for this past year, we went to some smaller cohorts to allow for the 6 feet of physical distancing. So if this plan is approved, we would return to typical size classrooms with physical distancing whenever possible. Students and staff should self-screen for symptoms and obviously stay home if they're showing symptoms. And daily temperature checks are encouraged but would no longer be required. Face coverings would be optional for all students and staff. They'd continue to be encouraged for those who are not yet vaccinated, but not required. And a reminder to respect the choices of others, whether they choose to wear masks or not wear masks. We need to make sure that we're respectful of that choice. Rock County Health Department requires contact tracing and quarantines for close contacts. With this proposal, we would, if people have proof of vaccination, they could avoid quarantine for close contacts unless they have symptoms. So if you're vaccinated, you don't need to quarantine if you're a close contact unless you have symptoms. If you're unvaccinated or if you're vaccinated with symptoms, the quarantines would be required. The standard length of those quarantines is 10 days. That's where we were at the end of this past year. Something new that we would put in place if this is approved is that students or staff may return after 7 days if they have a negative COVID test on that day 6. The recommendation from our county health department is that it takes 5 to 6 days sometimes for symptoms to show up and for a positive test to be in place. So that negative test on day 6 would allow someone after 7 days or on their 8th day to return. If someone is unable to isolate from a positive case, in some situations, a family member may be a positive case and they don't have the ability to isolate, there are occasions where a quarantine may need to be more than 10 days. And in all of those situations with close contacts and quarantines, we would continue to work closely with Rock County Health Department to notify anyone who is a close contact and to work with them on the length of their quarantine. In facility use, lunchrooms will remain physically distancing to the extent possible. Breakfast will be delivered to classrooms in the 4K through 3 schools. No additional lunch periods would be scheduled this year. If you recall, in all of our schools, we added additional lunch periods to spread students out more than 6 feet in the lunchrooms. 4K through 6 schools will assign lunch seats so that students are sitting with others who are already in close contact. If a student is sitting at their normal place at their desk, there are going to be some students who are inside 6 feet of them. And by scheduling lunch periods around those same students, it limits the potential number of close contacts and the potential spread of COVID. Our HVAC will continue to follow Wisconsin and OSHRA guidelines. One-way hallways would no longer be designated, and we would return to pre-COVID locker use at both the middle school and the high school. And in the other category, visitors in the schools, large groups and assemblies will be allowed. Open houses at the start of the school year at each of our schools, large group staff meetings, our welcome back for staff would be held in person. Guest speakers and volunteers would be allowed in all schools. We would return to our regular bus capacity with a seating chart for all buses, again, to help with limiting the spread and help with contact tracing. We would have households and daycares seated together on the bus as much as possible. For student trips, day field trips would be allowed, but physically distanced as much as possible. By day field trips, I mean a field trip where students leave at one point during the day and then return before the end of that day. Overnight trips and out-of-state or out-of-country trips will be allowed on a case-by-case basis depending on the location. It's possible that if we have a request for a out-of-state or out-of-country field trip and it's to a location where there is a large outbreak of COVID, it would be in the best interest of our students, staff, families, and community to not send our students and our staff to that location. But we want to be able to offer those opportunities for our students if it's a situation where the level of COVID positive cases doesn't differ from what it is here. And athletics and activity programs would follow WIAA guidance. And WIAA hasn't come out with anything yet for this fall. We're still waiting to hear from them. So if the board approves those changes as presented, they would, as I said, go into effect starting August 1st. Questions, comments, thoughts from board members?
I have some questions. The social distancing, are we moving it from 6 feet to 3 feet according to the CDC guidelines?
What we'd be doing is having physical distancing as available. So in our classrooms, we'd be back to our normal size classrooms. So in some of those classrooms, we would be able to have 6 feet of physical distancing, and we would have that if it's possible in the classroom. But in the majority of our classrooms, that wouldn't be possible, so we would have 3 feet of physical distancing. But there's also situations where educationally in the classroom, students are up and moving, teachers are working with small groups of students, so there may be times during the school day where people are inside of both 6 feet and inside of 3 feet. But what we want is anytime people can be more than 6 feet apart, they should be more than 6 feet apart. If you're just having a conversation with someone in the hallway and you can stand 6 feet apart and have that conversation, it limits the number of potential spreads of COVID and the number of close contacts.
So then what distance would we use to determine quarantine?
The quarantine is 6 feet. That's the Rock County recommendations, or actually Rock County requirements, is that close contact is defined by inside of 6 feet, while indoors inside of 6 feet with someone for 15 or more minutes.
How early has that requirement been put in place? They've obviously have been updating throughout the year. What's the last date of that recommendation?
I'm not sure when the last date is. That's been in place for a while.
The document that I've seen was back in August of 2020. Is that the document that you referred to in the update?
In the update, when I talked about Rock County requiring contact tracing and quarantines for close contact, I was referring to our conversation this past Thursday with Rock County Health Department when they reinforced that.
Okay, and did they reinforce then the 6 feet at that time?
They haven't changed the 6 feet from what they've had in place in the past.
Okay. And then how will we be encouraging those that are not vaccinated to wear a mask?
We will, when we publish our expectations, we will let people know that if they aren't vaccinated, they're encouraged to wear a mask, but it's optional.
Okay. And then on buses, transportation, will students be required to wear masks? Or is the policy mask choice throughout the district for everything?
The description that I gave would be for all school activities and locations, and buses fall under that category.
Okay.
So face coverings would be optional. If this is approved, face coverings would be optional on the bus.
Okay. And then I have one more question. So my concern is also with the quarantine and the contact tracing. I don't feel that vaccine status should be a factor in quarantine. If we're going to ask students to quarantine when showing symptoms, it should be the same for every student. Why would 6 days matter for a vaccinated person versus an unvaccinated person, given that there has been cases where vaccinated people have contracted COVID? So my concern there would be, again, creating that division and highlighting those that have been vaccinated or unvaccinated. And then those that don't show symptoms, even though they've been unvaccinated, why would they not be able to come back after 6 days? Because the guidelines and what we've learned about COVID shows that about approximately 5 days after that close contact, if you haven't shown symptoms, then there isn't a reason that you shouldn't be able to resume normal activity. I'm just concerned that if we do this, that we're going to be harming, the education of those that are choosing not to be vaccinated one way or the other. So that is not really a question, I guess, so much as a statement. So that's all I have.
Rich, I just wanted to thank you for all your leadership and all of this this whole ordeal. The board's given you a job, and I think you've done a great job. So thank you for that. We constantly have kids turning 12. Are there any plans for any more vaccine clinics so that these kids can get the vaccine?
We don't have any scheduled or upcoming vaccine clinics that we've organized with Rock County Health Department, in part because everyone who was 12 when we had our last one had the ability to do that. And as you said, there are a number of people who have turned 12 since then and will continue to turn 12 and become eligible. But I don't know that it's the best use of resources from the county or from our district to schedule something for in-house for that small of a group. I would encourage people, if they turn 12 and the family wants the student to become vaccinated, I would encourage them to work with their own personal medical provider to look at how to get that vaccine. And there are still plenty of opportunities for that out there.
Sure, thanks.
If that does change, or if the vaccine becomes available for those who are under 12, then we may line up an opportunity for people who choose to do that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the COVID-19 protocol changes for 2021-22 effective August 1, 2021 as presented.
A second.
There's a motion on the floor made by Rick, seconded by Shelley to approve the COVID-19 protocol changes for 2021-22 effective August 1st, 2021 as presented. Is there any more discussion?
I just have one more question on the WIA. If this is our August 1st protocol, a lot of our sports teams will be starting that first week, especially football. Will we go with this mandate for athletics then for a choice unless WIA comes out with something different?
Yes, and thanks for that question. It kind of ties to the question that Leslie asked earlier about the bus transportation too. So this proposal, if approved by the board, would cover all school activities, events, and transportation, both for our regular school and for field trips and for athletics. So what the board would be approving tonight would be moving forward with this plan, not just for classrooms, not just for lunchrooms, but for all of our different activities that take place. And again, that would start on August 1st. We do have some school activities taking place between now and August 1st, and we would stay with the plan that we have in place right now. A lot of this plan is specific to when students come back, so there wouldn't be a lot of changes, but I just want to make sure that the board is alert to that issue.
I have a question, Rich. One of the things that has been a challenge, I'm talking specifically about the athletics activities and any interaction we have with another school, whether it be extracurricular athletic, I'm sorry, you get there on mute. My question is, of course, I think most of us are familiar with the way this evolved through the COVID thing. As we resumed athletics or any activity, we had a set of protocols in place, but the other school that was involved with us certainly had protocols too. And the thought was that we would abide by whichever was more stringent in some regards, and that was relative to capacities and number of people and face coverings, etc. My question is, as each school is making their own choices relative to protocols that are or are not in place, how will that line up with, will we just do what Milton does regardless of the other schools' choices, or will there be some confluence of those particular things relative to who they are?
We would put these in place for anything that we're hosting, for sure. So if we have a volleyball team coming in to play us and these procedures are in place, we can't make rules for the other team. Obviously, if they want to, if they have a requirement that their athletes wear masks when they compete, then they would come in and wear masks when they compete. We can't tell them not to, obviously. But a lot of that discussion takes place between the athletic directors, the Badger Conference athletic directors, our region. Some of the competitions that we have are with schools that are not in our conference but are in our area. So we try to have some consistency with the understanding that every district is going to have a little bit different nuance. I think everybody is waiting to see what the WIA comes out with to make final determinations for fall athletics. So I don't have a for sure answer to that, because it really does depend on what WIA comes out with. But in general, when our students are doing anything under the Milton School District of Milton logo, whether it's practices, competitions at home, competitions on the road, we would expect them to follow the guidelines that we have. And if there's a school that wants to schedule us in a volleyball match, and they're saying that they won't play us unless our volleyball players are wearing a face covering, then our activities director would work with theirs on whether that's something that we want to take part in or choose to schedule with a different opponent. Did that get at what you're asking, Joe?
Can I make a motion for an amendment? Okay, sure. Thank you. I would make a motion to amend the current motion to state that, if we're following the Rock County Health Department requirement to contact trace and quarantine for close contacts, that we do not discriminate against vaccinated and unvaccinated students and staff.
That changes the nature of the motion, and that's not an amendment.
So can I? Okay. So I would need to bring that up as a separate motion after the vote.
An amendment, you can add a word or a few words, or delete a word or a few words, or change a date. You can't change the nature of the motion that has been made and seconded.
So then I would, sorry, bear with me.
No, it's fine.
So then I would want to delete the bullet points of, if vaccinated, quarantine is required only if symptoms are present and proof of vaccination is required. And just
make it the standard length of 10 days for both vaccinated and unvaccinated? Is that the same thing?
That, because that is a major part of the motion, that's not just deleting a word or a couple words, that's changing the nature of the motion.
Okay, well then as is, I cannot vote for this. So I don't think that we should be in the business of discriminating when we don't discriminate for other vaccines. We allow people to have exemptions, and I do not feel that this is something that we need to be getting in the business of.
Rich, can I ask a question about the proof of vaccination? I'm assuming that is the vaccination card that people receive when they receive the vaccine. Is that what the district will be asking for proof of vaccination?
Rock County Health Department tracks students and adults who have been vaccinated. So if we have, and we work closely with them on our close contacts. They let us know when there's a positive case. They ask us to help them with contact tracing because we're able to have access to seating charts and things like that. But we let them know who those close contacts are, and then they would let us know when that student would be able to return. So we wouldn't ask a student to show us or an adult, because this would be in place for students and staff. We wouldn't ask anyone to show us the vaccination card. We would just work with Rock County Health Department on the length of that quarantine.
Thank you.
And this is a Rock County rule. It's not something we're making up for Milton.
That is correct.
It's followed throughout all areas of Rock County. Thank you.
So I'm sorry, you're saying every school district has adopted every school district has adopted then this must show proof of vaccine, and that there is a difference in the days?
I don't know what every school district has adopted, and I do know that some school districts haven't had this discussion yet, that it's coming up in some school districts. But I know that Rock County Health Department requires both contact tracing and quarantines.
But they don't have specific requirements on the number of days.
They recommend 10 days. For vaccinations, what we're doing is cutting it down to the option of 7 days if someone has a negative test on that 6th day, and also based on their recommendation, allowing those who have been vaccinated to return, or allowing those who have been vaccinated to not be quarantined because of the much lower incidence of positive cases and hospitalizations and deaths from people who have been vaccinated.
I guess I'm just misunderstanding. Like, why do we require a proof of vaccine if we're still going to, if a person presents symptoms, they're still going to need to quarantine? Why do we need that proof of vaccine?
Leslie, I think if they have symptoms, even if they are vaccinated, they have to quarantine.
Right. So why do we need the proof of vaccine?
It's if you don't have symptoms and you don't quarantine, unless I misread it.
Right. This is where I have the issue, because, you know, we have other vaccinations. We have exemptions for those vaccinations. We don't require students to show constantly or what have you, a proof of vaccination for something in order to get out of quarantine.
I had an incident
You're fine.
I had an incident where I had a student exposed to red measles at a basketball tournament, and we had to show, as teachers, proof of vaccination of red measles, because I was in close contact with that student, and then that followed through the contact tracing then with the students that were on the bus with him or in lab with him, and who, you know, it was something that you wouldn't even think about measles, but there was outbreaks at a basketball tournament in Minnesota. So I had to show proof of that. That would be an example of when I had to show proof of something.
And if you didn't show proof?
I did show proof.
No, but if you didn't, if you had not shown proof.
If you weren't vaccinated, then you would have been isolated with the chance of getting measles.
Okay, but if you're vaccinated for measles, can you still get measles?
Not that I know, but.
But if you're
get whooping cough,
vaccinated for COVID, you can still get
yeah, there's
COVID.
probably a small opportunity. So I know people have been vaccinated for whooping cough that have gotten.
Certainly there are a few
I was just
things.
showing an example.
Sure, no, thank you.
Certainly there are a few things in lives that are 100%. So while there's no guarantee of being vaccinated will prevent you from getting COVID, the likelihood of it goes down by, but from high level to 95% protection against it. I guess I'd like to see and hope the county will revisit the distance for contact tracing, but on the flip side, being in close contact with someone with COVID is the only way you get it. I can't get COVID from someone who's in Madison because I'm here. My being close to them would be the manner in which I would pick it up. Now, I've been vaccinated and I'm happy I've been vaccinated, and my family who's older has been vaccinated. And if they were in close contact, the fact that they made that choice and we made that choice has value, and I don't see why we wouldn't recognize that. I think a lot of this is moot in the sense that because 56% of the county is vaccinated, the rate of infection has gone down so low that the chance of us having an outbreak in school today relative to where we were in October and November is dramatically less. And so I think a lot of this discussion is based on us considering the situation as it was in October and not the situation as it is in July of 2021. Furthermore, I think, we talk about pivoting in these things, and quite honestly, the plan isn't to go into this and plan on pivoting. The plan is to have the ability to react to something. If the building calls on fire, or if the building caught on fire, I see no need to call a special meeting of the school board to decide if we should put it out. If we had a problem, I trust that Rich is going to make the reasonable decision, and we as a board have the chance, if it is deemed unreasonable, to supersede that. Again, because the plan isn't to go back to masks as a plan. The plan is to implement this plan and take reasonable measures of cleaning stuff. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, but I would love to see the contact tracing distance go down. But again, I'm thankful that we are not where we were last year at this time. We are where we are this year at this time, which changes the denominator on all of these equations has changed, and for the better. And if you read through the plan, I think in any plan, there's always things that might be tweaked here or there, but ultimately, for all practical purposes, we're essentially back to where we were prior to all of this happening, which is where we wanted to go, which where we've been trying to go, and is where we're going. So I guess those are my thoughts on it. I don't have a question contained in it, but the trend lines here are where we have been trying to go, and simply just have the opportunity to take a reasonable decision if something dramatic happens, which I think in light of the data that we're seeing is probably not going to happen. But to take away the ability to make a decision when we still have the decision as a board, it just seems, I guess, preemptive and not necessary.
I would. Dave, you highlighted that you're happy with your family's choice, but I think with the way that this is written, we're creating discrimination, whether we're meaning to or not. And you're happy with your family's choice, and that's great. But other people who've chosen not to get vaccinated are happy with their family's choices, and we can't elevate one over the other.
Nobody's asking them to get vaccinated. That remains their choice.
Right. Yeah, no, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that by having a difference in quarantine days, the number of days you can be quarantined, or that you don't have to be quarantined just because you've been vaccinated, that is creating discrimination. And I think, as what was highlighted before, it opens us up to instances of bullying or coercion, and not that we're meaning to. I'm just trying to preempt any of that from individuals or as a whole. And so I want to make sure that we are continually highlighting the fact that we are a community of choice. We voted for mass choice. That's awesome. We're continuing that. I want to make sure that we continue that with the vaccine as well. We have a lot of people in our community that don't want their families vaccinated and a lot of people that do. But I don't think we need to elevate one over the other through our, mandated and guideline through Rock County Health Department, contact tracing and quarantine. That's all I'm trying to say with this.
Leslie, are you suggesting that it would be better if vaccinated kids had to quarantine?
No, I'm saying that.
Well, I guess would you rather have that?
I don't want there to be an elevated status just because you get a vaccine. That creates a lot of unnecessary peer pressure. And I think, like I said, families have made a choice, and maybe they'll change their mind halfway through the year. That's fine. I mean, that's their choice. But what we need to be careful of elevating those vaccinated students or staff over the unvaccinated by stating, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine. When we know and we've seen in the news and throughout the county and the state that vaccinated people can still contract COVID. So, I just stand by my statement that we're creating discrimination when it's unnecessary. And if we're going to have quarantine and if we're going to have contact tracing, it needs to be the same across the board. Just because you get vaccinated, that's great for your family if that's what you choose to do, but it doesn't mean that you're a higher class citizen.
Leslie, the way I read the document, it's very clear that it's either unvaccinated or vaccinated folks. They have to have symptoms. That's what the document is saying.
But I think that maybe I'm just misunderstanding it.
Well,
but the way I read it was that the unvaccinated still had to quarantine. Is that not true?
Only if they have symptoms.
And I want to make sure that that's clear. If someone is vaccinated and they don't have symptoms, they would not need to quarantine. That, according to this, and that's based on CDC, DHS, and Rock County Health Department recommendation. And it is different than if someone is unvaccinated. And the reason that it's different is because the vaccine provides an additional layer of protection, not only for that person, but also for everyone that they come into contact with. If someone is vaccinated and they have symptoms, then they would need to be quarantined, but only if they have symptoms. If someone is unvaccinated, they would need to be quarantined whether they have symptoms or not for either 7 days or 10 days. 10 days is the standard. That's what the CDC and Rock County recommends as the best way to provide protection for your students, staff, families, and communities. They do give a option to have a system in place where people can return after 7 days if they have a negative test. And we didn't have that in place before. Some other districts have put that in place and have found it to be effective, and I'm recommending that we put that in place. But people would be, if you've chosen not to be vaccinated, or if you don't have an opportunity to be vaccinated, the best way to protect our students, staff, families, and community, and to ensure that we're able to continue to have school and not have to close down a classroom or close down a school or cancel a sport because of a large spread, is to make sure that when someone has tested positive or come in contact with someone that has tested positive, that they are separated from everyone else so that it doesn't spread. That's how pandemics have been addressed for many, many years. It's not something new, and it's not something unusual that we're bringing forward. There is, if I could, there's one other thing that I would like to make sure is clear too. Is it all right if I briefly share something else?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just want to provide a little bit of history, because throughout this process, we worked really hard to keep the board and the community updated on what we're learning, both from what's happening in the schools, what's happening in our community, and from our conversations with Rock County Health Department. So since March of 2020, when all of the schools in the state were shifted to fully virtual because of COVID, we've held regular updates for the school board. Twice a month, we meet twice a month. As you recall, at all of those meetings, we give the school board an update on what's happening in the schools, a very thorough update on what's happening at the schools. Throughout last summer, as we were preparing for this previous school year, we spent a significant amount of time publicly at board meetings with the board, having conversations about this issue, about what our plans were moving forward, about what we were hearing and what we were seeing. And the board approved our Milton Forward plan. It isn't something that our administration put in place or that we just put together on our own. It was based on significant discussions that we had at this table in public. In the fall of 2020, we had discussions about what to do with athletics and whether to hold athletics, how to hold athletics. Again, the board made a decision on how to move forward with that. As we were having discussions about following Rock County's recommendation for the holidays because of holiday travel, and at the time in October, November, the positive cases both in our district and across the county and across the country were exploding. So we had, again, public discussions about whether we should go fully virtual over the holidays, and the board made a decision that that's what we should do. And in the spring, we've had discussions about any possible changes that we've had. So I think that we've done a really good job of both keeping the board and the community informed of both the situation and things that we're considering, and bringing those big decisions to the board, while also allowing our admin team the ability to make day-to-day decisions so that we can continue to function as a school district. So I think that that's important. Our plan would be that we would continue at our twice weekly school board meetings to keep the board informed of anything that we're hearing that's happening. If there was something that was an emergency, we have the ability to hold a special board meeting if needed. But the board also has the ability to regular meetings to make a motion and take action on any changes that they would like to see us make with this plan.
Thank you for that clarification. I'd just like to circle back and state that what I heard you say was that if a student or staff has been vaccinated and they don't show symptoms, that they do not have to quarantine, but that if they have been unvaccinated, or if they're vaccinated and they show symptoms, they have to be quarantined for at least 7 days.
The standard quarantine for close contact is 10 days. If someone has been vaccinated and they're not showing symptoms, they don't have to be quarantined at all. They can choose to if the family chooses to quarantine their child, but we're not requiring that. And if someone, whether they are vaccinated or not, if someone has that COVID test on the 6th day and it comes back negative, then they can return after the 7th day. But the standard is 10 days for the close contact, but we are shortening that up in certain situations where we can feel relatively sure that bringing the student back or the staff member back doesn't create substantial risk. And those special situations that we would consider not creating substantial risk would be if they have that negative test after 6 days, or if they've been vaccinated and they're not showing symptoms.
Okay. And again, my concern is that by stating that vaccinated students, most of the teachers have been vaccinated, but vaccinated students who show no symptoms don't have to quarantine, but in the same classroom, an unvaccinated student who doesn't show symptoms has to be quarantined, you're creating discrimination and you are limiting the educational opportunities of a student who's been unvaccinated just because their family chooses not to. So that is the problem that I have with this. And if there's a way that I can eliminate the language so that it fits an amendment, then let's do that. So if, Mr. President, if I make a motion to eliminate.
You can't make another motion. There's a motion on the floor. We can't have another motion on the floor when there's an open motion.
Sorry, an amendment to eliminate the point that vaccinated students and staff do not have to be quarantined if they're not showing symptoms. I'd like to eliminate that.
We've already been down this road, Leslie. That is not amendable. It's not, an amendment is a minor change that changes the entire nature of the motion.
Okay, thank you.
I think lots of students and families, talking about choice, have chosen to get vaccinated. And if we tell those families, oh, you're vaccinated, but you still have to quarantine, you're going to get all kinds of upset people, because then a vaccinated student with no symptoms is going to miss school. And then I think that would be a big problem.
So, and then what you're saying right there, what I hear you saying, excuse me, is that you will elevate the vaccinated over the unvaccinated in their educational opportunities. So
I'm not elevating anyone to anything.
This is not a discussion. This is a board meeting.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've taken up enough time and I've made my point. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? I'll add a few comments. Leslie, I appreciate your perspective. It is not my perspective. I've heard a lot of discussion and read a lot of emails lately about how our superintendent is not an elected official. That is true. He is not. However, the board is our elected officials, and one of the most important jobs the board does is to hire a superintendent so that the superintendent does the day-to-day work of the district. It's not the board's job to do the day-to-day work of the district. Our superintendent, then, one of his most important jobs is to hire really quality administration, which we have in this district, and we're very lucky to have in this district. Those are the people that do the day-to-day operations of this district. And I think over the last year, they've done an outstanding job. I would like to say to you, Rich, and to all of our administration that in very difficult situations, you have always had, in my opinion, the best interest of our students and our families and this community at heart, and I appreciate that. I think that as I look at the protocols, we are as close to getting back to normal, other than the quarantine, as is humanly possible, given the fact that there still is a pandemic. It hasn't gone away. Yes, it's lessened. There's lots of people who are vaccinated. But when I look at this and I look at all the points about lunches, about buses, about all the daily aspects of school, we are pretty much back to as normal as we can be. And so I do support this. I think our administration has put a lot of thought into this and has spent numerous hours looking into this. And I think it is a good plan for moving forward. So without further discussion, I will remind the board there is a motion on the floor. I will repeat the motion.
Mike, before you do that,
yes.
I apologize. I was going to comment and I did not mean to trump you.
No, absolutely, Joe, go for it.
I've been debating what I was going to say, quite honestly. And I just have a couple thoughts. And I'll apologize to my tech friends. I don't think I'm online anymore. I lost my battery and I've got a borrowed laptop. So
can you just make sure you speak loud enough that it comes through on?
Well, I seldom have any trouble with that. So at any rate, I would echo a lot of what Mike said. I think the plan that we've got in front of us here, with the exception of the phrasing for the quarantine, is relatively unrestrictive. And I think even the folks at comment kind of shared that with us, that nobody has much issue with anything like that. And quite honestly, myself, the quarantine is the only part that I struggle with. And I am not unsympathetic to any of the speakers or folks of that mindset. I struggle with whether we should be mandating quarantines on folks and vaccines, yes or no. However, this decision always is the dichotomy is You folks are advocating for your children and your families, et cetera, and we are advocating for 3,500 kids and families. Most of the time, that's the same thing. Sometimes it's not. And with the idea that should you choose not to vaccinate your child, that's wonderful and that's a personal choice. To the degree that that puts another child at risk, that's the hard part for this board. And the plans, protocols, policies, things that we put in place have to factor all of that in. That if we've got a classroom full of kids and we have a positive COVID case, of course we need to contact trace, because if your child were exposed, you need to know that. And it's our obligation and responsibility to tell you that. And what comes with that then is how we protect the other children in that classroom. If quarantining a positive case and the others that have been in contact, and here again, I'm going to tell you right up front, I struggle with the vaccinated versus unvaccinated and the length of time, and there are certainly at least anecdotal evidence that vaccinated people can get COVID and unvaccinated people can be symptom-free and spread COVID. So that makes this entire thing murky and tough and challenging. And I'm going to be in support of this motion. However, the only reason I can do that is I'm not real comfortable with the quarantine language and some of those things, but the body of it is good. And I've struggled over the last 20 months, as all of us have, but I will applaud our superintendent, our administrators, and my fellow board members, because we have found a way through this that by and large has worked. I think this will work. And yes, it's going to be a little bit of an inconvenience to your child if you end up quarantined and that's against everything that you believe. But in the big picture, that's going to be a small inconvenience. And you may not agree with me on that, but as I sit here and wrestle with a tough conundrum, if you will, you weigh risks and benefits and all of that. And I don't want to take a child out of a classroom for a minute. But if it means one less kid gets COVID, if it means one less case, and of course we'll never know that, but if the price of that is 7 days or 10 days, and we're going to obviously jump to the aid of that quarantined kid, we're going to support them, they're going to be virtual, they're going to get extra help, because we've proven that we're going to do that. I'm okay with that. I don't loudly champion it, but I'm going to be okay with it. So that's what I wanted to share with the motion, and I will stop there.
Thank you, Joe. So with no further discussion, I will repeat the motion. The motion that has been made and seconded is to approve the COVID-19 protocol changes for the 2021-22 school year effective August 1st of 2021 as presented. And I will do a roll call vote, starting with Shelley.
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Mike is a yes. Rick?
Yes.
Leslie?
No.
Joe?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you, everyone. I will say to people sitting out, we always welcome you to stay for the rest of the board meeting. There's other things we will be discussing, but if you choose to leave now, we will not be offended. Thank you for your attendance. So we'll move on to item number 3.
Thank you, sir. You bet.
Thanks, Noah. Item number 3, Human Resources Committee report from Rick Mullen. So Rick, I'll turn it over to you. I'm assuming with the great assistance of Mr. Dumer.
Yes, thank you, Mike. The HR committee met last week on Wednesday, the 7th. First item on the agenda is the School Employee Wellness Clinic Pilot Program. As outlined in your memo back in April, Chris and his staff brought to the board the near-site clinic that SSM has been working on. And it was brought to our attention that this was going to be put together with some other nearby school districts. Since then, Chris and his staff have been working together on the details, and that information is being brought to us tonight. These handouts talk about the kinds of things that are going to be provided at this clinic, the hours, the location, and most importantly, the fact that these things can be done in the Edgerton Clinic at a reduced or no cost, depending on the type of health plan that was selected by the employee. There are going to be lots of things that are going to be offered there, such as our annual preventative care visits, well child exams, labs, mental health services, many other things, as you can take a look there. This is all just kind of informative. Chris is going to be sharing this information out with staff later this week. I'm assuming maybe tomorrow, Chris?
We're going to shoot for that.
Okay. I would like to extend our thanks to Chris and his staff, Marcy and Chris, for all of their work that they have put into this. This is very exciting that this is finally here. We've been talking about this for quite some time now, and I'm very excited to be able to offer this to our staff. So thanks, Chris. Thanks to you and your staff for that. Anyone have any questions or comments about any of this?
Chris, just a couple quick questions, and first echoing Rick's comments on this seems like it's really coming together and a good thing. One of the items that it mentioned that the provider will be able to access your medical records. I'm of the impression these are employees of SSM, right? This isn't a third-party contracted firm that the reason they have access is because they are SSM, right?
That is correct. It's a dean physician's assistant, and then the person staffing the front door of the phones is also a dean employee. That is correct.
And also looking through some of the cost structure things as well, I think in addition to being of value to the folks who are using it, savings to the insurance plan overall with some of the items that you've outlined in there, I think are pretty impressive. So again, my question is, I guess, more of a comment that this looks very thoughtful and to be a great benefit for the folks that'll interact with it. So thank you.
Thanks. We're looking to really roll this out with staff, like Rick said, this week, and then we are going to make sure that we're explaining it when staff come back too in the fall. So this coming August, we're working with Dean to see if our schedules align for those next steps to really communicate this out. We're not expecting much traffic through this clinic this month, but we're hoping in August and on that there will be more traffic going through. And that's also that partnership with the other school districts as well.
I would also just echo what's been said. I mean, this is really a great opportunity for our teachers and staff, and I'm excited to see it implemented. So,
thank you.
Chris, I just had one question. A big part of a wellness visit, a yearly wellness visit, is getting prescriptions renewed. Most doctors just give a prescription for a year. Do you know, are the people that will be running the clinic, are they qualified to renew prescriptions? I'm just thinking if teachers knew that, like they could give it at the clinic, they might be more apt to go there rather than see their regular physician.
I believe so, Mike, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'll have to look into that.
Okay. Because again, I think teachers are more apt to use it if you can give specific examples of here's what you can get at the clinic rather than go to your doctor. Because if I went there expecting to get my prescriptions renewed and then they couldn't, and I feel like when I get go to see my doctor or do a phone visit with my doctor, that would be a little bit.
You said it was a PA?
It's a physician's assistant.
Yeah, they can definitely.
My children's pediatrician is a PA, and she does that.
Yeah.
That's my limited understanding of what the difference between a PA and a doctor is.
Right. If you could just check into that for sure, I think that'd be great. Thanks.
Absolutely.
I think it's a great option for staff. I'll reiterate what some of the other board members have said.
And the biggest message that we're going to be putting out to staff is that we would, the clinic and HR, highly encourage the employee to reach out first about why they're going to that clinic. We would hate to have them show up at the clinic
only to be redirected back to Janesville or to Edgerton or to somebody else. And then we're just going to have hard feelings about the wasted trip.
Yeah, it's not an urgent care.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments on that one? All right, thank you, Chris. Next up was discussion and possible action on 2021-22 athletics, activities, and advisor letter of appointments. Also, as noted in the memo last month, the board approved the staffing baseline and budgeted amount for the activities, athletics, and advisor positions. Jeremy and Jeff have spent much time completing the review of these different positions and the needs, and they have brought forward to us these letters for us to approve. Thanks to Jeremy and Jeff for all your time put in on that. So, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to approve the 2021-22 high school athletics and activities compensation spreadsheet as presented.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor made by Rick and seconded by Joe to approve the 2021-2022 high school athletics and activities compensation spreadsheet as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Next up was a discussion and possible action on 2021 summer school compensation. The board has previously approved the number of teaching hours and support staff hours for July and August summer school. There's a chat spreadsheet in board docs, which specifies the amounts and those particular staff positions. Those are going to be for the rest of summer school for this summer, which includes some other continuing ed at the high school and also the sort of making the move type classes. I'm not sure if that's what you call it anymore, but for kids who are going to be switching schools this coming fall. If more staff are going to be needed for June of next year, that will come forward to the board at another time for our review. So, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to approve the July and August 2021 summer school compensation spreadsheet as presented.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor made by Rick, seconded by Shelley to approve the July and August 2021 summer school compensation spreadsheet as presented.
Chris, did you have anything to add to that?
I do not. Thank you.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay.
Kim, can you please reflect I did not abstain from voting on that?
Sure, I'll work on the abstain, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Motion carries.
All right, that's all I have, Mike.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. Moving on to number 4, new business. Letter A is discussion and possible action on student academic standards for the 2021-22 school year. Mr. Ruggles, we welcome you to the microphone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Officer. Turn my microphone on. There we go. Thank you. So I'm here again one summer with our state statute. I'm here every summer to bring you the academic standards. So this is a state statute requirement. And each year we have some subtle changes within the standards to bring to you. I will highlight that Wisconsin DPI has done a fabulous job over the last several years. John Johnson, who heads up the standards review, has done an amazing job. And as it stands now, all of our core has been updated within the last 6 years, and that's pretty incredible because it is such a long process to do. The new updated math standards will be coming out here at any point, and it is a collaborative process and very forward-thinking process, and they've done some great work there. So within the document that was shared with you, there's been no changes to the English reading, writing, and mathematics standards. They've been updated, and we have some links to those updated standards that we've adopted. We've had staff over the last several years working on our essential standards as part of that process as well, digging into the new standards review. Science has been brought on several years ago. Social studies standards are new within the last several years. We do have teams that, especially at the 4 through 8 level, that are working diligently on those new standards and are looking to adopt some new resources for 8th level within the next year or so. Something that we've added over the last 2 years are the ACT College and Career Readiness standards. It's something that our high school has done a lot of work on, and we're not required to bring that forward by law, but it was something that we know that we take a lot of pride on. Our team has done a lot of work on, so it was something we want to include within this document. And we added the ITL standards last year. We are not required to take on the ITL standards, the information technology standards, and we didn't want to do it as a silo. So as we review our standards and add in the new power standards, we also do it through the lens of information and technology literacy, meaning we want all of our technology to flow through our current standards. So that was something that we brought to you last summer. New to you this year is our social and emotional learning competencies. We've shared many times with this group that social emotional learning, relationships, are going to be huge for us next year. We're putting a lot of emphasis on those pieces for next year. So with that, we wanted to highlight our commitment to SEL competencies. We purchased a second step curriculum now, and we'll be using that curriculum K-8 for this school year, and we'll have that digital curriculum as well. So we wanted to make sure that we highlighted those competencies along with the required state statute that we have to bring to you. So, what questions would you have for me?
So in the SEL curriculum, under implementation, number 9, it says involve families and communities. Have you been inviting parents and guardians to work with the implementation team in the past? Because I know Second Steps has been used for several years now. Have you been creating focus groups to bring?
I'm not sure if that was part of the process when it came here, because when I came here 3 years ago, we were doing Second Step K3, and then we brought it up into Northside at the middle school as well. Actually, I think it was at Northside, but we added it to 6th grade and then to the middle school as well. So I can't tell you if there was any focus groups that were made before that time. I can tell you that the name of the committee, that our health committee, our wellness committee rather, has been talking about social emotional learning quite extensively, and they've made some recommendations that Susan and I have brought forth to the rest of the administrators, and we've used that feedback with our teachers as well. So I know our wellness committee is very interested in that topic, and they want to make that a priority for us as well. So, but that is a good point about making sure that we are involved in the community in that conversation.
Is there a plan to create focus groups to involve the community with Second Steps?
We have not talked about that yet.
Okay. So with Second Steps, they have on their website, they have a statement that says, "We are committed to ensuring our programs are culturally relevant, affirming, and accessible to all children, especially the most systematically marginalized children." Then they have a learn more section that takes you to a website called Committee for Children, advocating for a more just and peaceful world. And their statement states, "At Committee for Children, we believe that social emotional learning is fundamental to achieving social justice. We are dedicated to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, to becoming an anti-racist organization, and to building a more just and peaceful world where every child can thrive. This means creating a culture of continuous learning and improvement where our people, programs, and supports reflect and address the needs of educators as well as the needs of the diverse communities we serve and those we hope to serve." Has this been something that Second Steps has had as their statement of commitment and mission in the past?
I don't know when they brought that on as their statement.
Okay. While I think it's, relevant to the times that we, teach anti-racism, I'm a little hesitant about the social justice issue. That seems to be something that that we need to look a little bit more closely at, I would think. Especially if that is a statement that they're adhering to as a vision overall. So.
Again, I think that's your opinion, Leslie. I don't have a problem with the wording of that. And so I don't think it's fair and I don't know that you meant it this way, but for you to make that statement, that doesn't represent the entire board.
I agree. I've used this program in the middle school. We had had it at a term for probably 2 years.
You're muted, Shelly.
We had it. I've used it in the middle school, at the 7th grade and 8th grade levels, and we used it because our guidance counselor couldn't make it into all the different rooms. So a lot of it was on friendship. It was on working on relationships, diversity. Most of ours was more on how to talk to each other, how to engage with each other, that type of topic. I didn't experience a huge area of the areas you're concerning yourself on. It's probably their statement for diversity and inclusion, which is our goal for all of our students and all of our families to feel included and be accepted in our community. So I agree with your statement there. But like I said, most of it was in place of our guidance counselor being able to come in and do units with kids. So it was usually a short 2-minute video, and it was kids presenting, views on different things coming in. And then we'd have a group session, and then they'd partner up with somebody for 2 minutes. It's usually like a 15-minute lesson is what it was during homeroom, in our case at least. And then we'd do a group, open dialogue discussion on what they talked about with their partners. So
yeah, and that's what my own children have experienced at Milton West prior to this last year. I guess from where I'm coming from is that I would really like to see us opening this up to the community, letting them know what the lessons in the curriculum are, letting them have buy-in and input, so that, if changes need to be made, then we are getting that input beyond our own walls. So.
Brian, just a question of clarification, and this might be for Susan too. Second step, is that taught by the classroom teacher? It's not taught by guidance counselors, right?
Correct. Classroom.
So classroom teachers teach it, and it's in addition to the units and the programs that are done by guidance counselors.
Yep.
The guidance counselors, for the most part, are good prescriptive behaviors, which really should be taught by somebody other than the classroom teacher.
Right.
Because of the level of importance of those. The second step is almost purely taught by classroom teachers. Counselors will support the instruction if there's a concept that's more difficult to grasp. However, it's gen ed teachers teaching it, and as Shelley was talking about concepts of the basics about how to be a friend and what does that look like. When you're struggling with something, how do you ask the teacher or someone else to back away? It's really on how to work with other people, whether you're in a math class or at recess or in the lunchroom. And we have found some really positive things happen versus PBIS, which oftentimes looks at disciplining. We're trying to teach the skills so the kids can use them and then be able to focus on the reading, the writing, and the math.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing that.
And parents do have, I think most of the teachers have a parent school connection letter that goes home that talks about how to implement this, as well as the Ready for K app that sends information home that again keeps parents connected to what it is that we're teaching in school when it comes to that SEL. I think teachers have always done this, have taught some of these skills. We just didn't purchase a program that would align all of what we're teaching so that when a student doesn't get it in one second grade class, but not in another second grade class, and then they go to a third grade class and there's not that continuity.
Right. Yeah, and I remember receiving those papers that you're referring to. I guess for more openness, I would like to see focus groups. I think it would be helpful. That's all. It's a suggestion.
Mr. President, if there's no other questions, I'll move to approve the student academic standards for 2021, 22, and 22 as presented.
I'll second it.
There's a motion on the floor made by Joe, seconded by Dave, to approve the student academic standards for 2021-22 as presented. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, respond with aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Ruggles. Item D under new action new business, is action on the 2021-22 open enrollment alternative applications, which are in board docs.
You'll see more of these now that we're after July 1st. These are the students who either missed the opportunity to apply in the spring for the regular application period, or their situation has changed and they choose to open enroll now. So from now to the beginning of school, you'll see a few more of these.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021-22 open enrollment alternative applications as presented.
No second.
There's a motion on the floor made by Rick, seconded by Leslie, to approve the 2021-22 open enrollment alternative applications as presented. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Down to miscellaneous. Letter A, staffing reports. Again in board docs. And there was an updated, and I believe what's in board docs now is the updated. Thank you, Kim.
I'll move to approve the staffing report as presented.
I'll second that.
There's a motion on the floor made by Dave, seconded by Rick, to approve the staffing report as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And, opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Letter B, meeting dates upcoming. Mr. Dahman. I know there's a curriculum committee meeting
There's
tomorrow.
a curriculum committee meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock, a finance committee meeting on July 22nd at noon. The next two regularly scheduled board meetings are on Monday, July 26th at 6:30 and Monday, August 9th at 6:30. There's a policy committee meeting on August 3rd at 1 p.m.
Just note tomorrow, they're shifting the department in here, so the curriculum meeting will be up in the second floor campus. All the other meetings will be back.